Thank you all for coming today. I thought we might just do something a little bit different to the usual format of talks like this. And since we are celebrating International Women's Day and we are in climate crisis, could we all just close our eyes for a minute and just breathe and just forget our to-do list, forget our emails, forget kids at home waiting for us to get back, all of that stuff, and just sit and be present for just a minute. So I think if you'll join me, we'll just close our eyes and breathe for a second. And just be present in the room so we can think about what we need to do. I'd like to start with a beautiful poem I came across the other day called An Ode to the Women of the Earth. It's written by Amanda Gorman, who some of you may remember was a very beautiful African-American girl who spoke at Joe Biden's inauguration. Alone, a woman is a root curling for change. But together women are a forest, alive with spirit, a riotous power, the most timeless pact, a call to act, to all those who hear it. Sturdy as crouched valleys, proud as hard-baked earth, there is nothing more natural than a woman who knows the worth of making the choice to raise her voice. She's a force of nature, the world's thorax, the global village's throat. She's a lorax, speaking for those who cannot speak, defying those who think us weak. In and of herself, she's a tall mountain peak, unintimidated and undeniably unique. Combined in our daily actions, big or small, we can fall in line to preserve the planet for future generations. We have the force of a hurricane, but we build instead of break. We have the might of an earthquake, but we strengthen instead of shake. For all our sakes, we get to make the world a cleaner, greener place. We take a stand, answering the call not just for ourselves, but for all who will follow in our wake. We don't sit or wallow or wait, because we know the planet's fate is in our hands. We see that land and sea and sky has never been debatable, and that a dream is only as sustainable as it is attainable. We don't just imagine the movement, we began it, we plan it for the good of the planet. Women ran it, knowing we can. It is not a question of just preservation, but progress. We will not rest. We will yell it. We will tell it. We'll spell it out and shout it out in our daily decisions. We women may give that which you cannot borrow, the will to rise, even if just for today, for the eyes of who will be watching for tomorrow. And we're here today, after thinking about that poem, to think about how sustainability and solving it is really a female leadership issue. And I'm here because I found the courage through that female leadership style to do what I do best and to take inspiration from what I learned as a magazine editor. And a bit like the heirloom jewellery that I used to use on photo shoots, melt it down and make something new out of my career. And I'd like to tell you what I've learned. Pivotal moment in my career summed up by this image. It's the last image I commissioned for Vogue when I was working. It was the Russian edition of Vogue, funnily enough. I had a massive challenge trying to get the Russian editors to sign off on transgender models and Me Too slogans in their pages. I wanted a swan song that I knew could be a force for change, and this was just on the back of Me Too, and we saw brands like Dior and everybody else showing these clothing, supporting Me Too. And the point is that clothing and style does have the power to change society. It's a huge cultural force, and what we wear tells the world who we want to be or who we are at that given moment. And it's like sleep and food. It's something we interact with every single day. But fashion is broken. It's mired in misogyny. It's choking our planet and committing human rights abuses every day. And so what belies these beautiful clothes here you see that I styled in this picture is a hidden and sinister paradox. The global fashion industry relies on a workforce of up to about 80 million people for direct operations. And then when you count in farmers, logistics, warehousing, and all those other things in the value chain, it could be up to about 1/7 of the world's population who are affected, including our planet. Wage theft, unsafe working conditions, slavery, abuse and violence could all be just in a day's work for these women. It's like the apocalypse has come early. It's a shocking fact that the workforce of women do not sometimes even enjoy basic human rights. And they are the backbone of an industry that brings in about 2 trillion in revenue and growing. However, most of those decision makers for this industry are still men. I thought I'd share on a more positive note some hope. which might come to change some of these facts I just shared with you, about a recent survey that was done by a global recruiter looking at female leadership. They surveyed about 60 female CEOs in Fortune 1000 companies and looked at the impact these women could have and what the red thread was in their leadership style. They found that women have to take, on average, at least 4 years longer to get to the top, having traversed a greater number of roles and companies and industries. But these women, 2/3 of them believed that they could use their role to bring purpose in their organisation. These women found they were much more likely to engage the power of teams and had a bigger tendency to share credit. The defining traits that this study uncovered was, in these female CEOs, was courage, risk-taking, resilience, agility, managing ambiguity, navigating uncertainty in a constantly shifting environment. What qualifies me to tell you about all this today? I thought we'd go back a couple of steps so I could show you where I've been and where we're going. The red thread in my career, as you'll see here, going right back to when I was at Central St Martin's through to working for all these different Vogues, The Economist, styling Academy Award winners, working for household name brands and global platforms, has been always about what's most interesting is about when you blend fashion with something bigger than itself. And I've been driven by finding where fashion was attached to innovation, globalization, and disruption. Here's a sneak preview of some of my greatest hits over the years. And they are all very strong women too. And I'll come on to how I've managed to put purpose into their wardrobes. And a handful of the titles I've partnered with over the years or worked for. And I've worked in pretty much every continent, styled runway shows in Tokyo, TV commercials in Los Angeles, styled all over the world, supermodels, writers, rock stars, and royalty. I even managed to accidentally end up working for an oil-rich dictator, where I deployed a Second World War army tank in the river to cross over the Black Sea to capture a really important image for a cover magazine. So nature and travel has always been in my blood, and I managed to put it into my work where I could. And funnily enough, being in sustainability now means I've come back full circle. I grew up in a family where my mother's family had been the custodians of the same piece of land for 653 years, and growing up we were kicked out into the fields and to go and talk to the farmers pretty early on and not allowed to watch television, and driven all day, every day to hear about land conservation and how we were going to stop diseases in the trees and things. So going back to nature and having to now think about soil health, for example, in my job is really kind of a pleasure and a luxury. And my call to action, you probably want to know, what was the pivotal moment? Because it probably sounds, God, she had this amazing career, and there it was, flying around in first class, going to Hollywood, to stay in hotel suites and drinking champagne with all these movie stars, and why would I want to go back to start reading soil health reports? Well, I was working for Olivia Colman for several years, and we had this big Oscar campaign coming up for her movie, The Favourite. And I said to her, as I'd said to the women working before her, like Phoebe Waller-Bridge and Scarlett Johansson and Julianne Moore, look, every time you step out on the red carpet, you get hundreds of millions of digital impressions, and that is a platform. And if we don't put purpose into your wardrobe, then we're mugs, and it's, frankly, a dereliction of duty. So Olivia and all those other great women were like, absolutely, and I said, I'll never make you look bad, don't worry, style first, but we can bring purpose in. So Olivia wore, her biggest outfits were always made by working mothers. Miuccia Prada is a working mother, so is Stella McCartney, for example. And that was easy, family-owned brands, artisanal craft, all that was easy, but when I said to her, we're going to also do sustainability here for you, she was like, that's good, I love it, great. So we had 9 months of lead time, and I went to brands, big and small, global and local, and said, look, if you want to make stuff for her, which is always custom outfits, they've got to be sustainable. And I got pushback. And of course, Stella McCartney and Prada were probably the only two who were still able to comply with us. And then at the same time, I go to these press days where I'd get invited to come and see the new sustainable handbag range, made of course of PVC, which is petrochemical. And I got fed up. And then in tandem to that, after a relentless year of I think it was 103 custom outfits we'd made, and she'd been on the road, Golden Globe, SAGs, BAFTAs, you name it, I then went and collapsed at an ashram in the Northern Himalayas, where I asked if I could go and volunteer in the community, and they said, well, actually we really love the Rahat Foundation, who are an animal hospital near a town called Dehradun. And that's me there with some of my patients. And that's the Rahat there. And my first patient that morning when I was shadowing the vet was a cow. And of course they are incredibly sacred in India, so they have this extra resonance when you're there seeing them. And this cow had a huge hole on the side of her ribs, and I'm sorry if any of you are squeamish, but this hole, it was about the size of a melon. And you could see right into her insides, and what was coming out was, it looked like this, it was consumer textiles, and she'd eaten them. And I sort of collapsed on the floor, burst into tears, and then I thought, God, this is so bizarre. I've had this sort of high-low mix of brands all pushing back and not being able to do sustainable clothing for something as big as an Oscar winner. And then I can see the damage to myself coming out of this poor, beautiful cow, and that was enough. I was like, that's it, I'm done, I'm going to go work for the UN, I'm going to go work for Oxfam, I don't care. And then I had to have a little chat with myself. Okay, so maybe it's not quite as dramatic as that, and maybe there's a middle way here. So I thought, well, I could become a change agent. I've always been okay with disruption and innovation. I've kind of gone where fashion didn't quite go yet, and launching the first Vogue in China or Turkey or wherever it was. So I'm okay with a bit of innovation and disruption. Yeah, I can do that. Okay, so I then decided to create Greenwood Studio to be an agent for change to insert ourselves across the fashion value chain, and ignoring big luxury, ignoring the big volume players at the bottom who frankly have the resources and the capabilities if they want to be sustainable, but just don't have either investors, boards or government giving them a big enough kick to do it. But I realised that actually about half of the industry's turnover is comprised of medium-sized businesses. And where would they go? They would likely be outsourcing financial and legal to outside consultants or businesses, so they would need an outsourced chief sustainability officer. So I figured out that could be where I could start. And we've had highs and lows since we launched. We have had challenges such as being used to only having the best in my career, working at all these blue chip publications and having a driver and all these things. I was like, well, I'm used to having the best, but suddenly you've got a startup and you're like, well, I can't afford the best lawyer and I can't afford the best accountant and I need a website. And what's been amazing in working with other women, especially other female startups, is how many women want to support each other. Several of them are here in the room today. Rashmi, who's sitting next to me, has been incredibly supportive and gave me great advice, as have Caroline, who's here, and my friend Anastasia, who's an architect, and many people in the. And that is another way that female leadership works, is working with each other and lifting each other up. We've had lows, many lows, which was trying to get brands to comply with being more ESG relevant and to consider sustainability, but the fashion industry on the whole has its head in the sand like an ostrich. And then we realised, okay, so we might need to think about other ways that we can create impact, because really it is about impact. So what we've ended up finding is that the pre-competitive space has been a great resource for us, and these are just a selection of some of the entities we've partnered with, doing projects of all sizes, speaking at global summits, press, white papers, lecturing at Harvard, becoming B Corp pending ourselves, which has been extremely exciting. And then just recently I've been adopted by the Women in Web3 network, which I still fight imposter syndrome for every day, but I think again that's a female leadership issue. You know, we should not have imposter syndrome. Now, where we're going at Greenwood is, where we're excited, is the future of fashion and solving sustainability not only will be down to really strong female leadership, but will be around technology and software. And I mean, technology, let's think about that for a second, is yet another sector that is crying out for some female leadership. Because I wonder what you guys will think, would we still, if Instagram and Pinterest were run by women, would they allow self-harm videos that go to teenage girls to be published? Would they not have figured that out? I wonder. I can't answer that, but I do wonder. We're working on putting together an ESG rating for the fashion industry, but it's still in development. And our dream goal really at Greenwood is to build it out, do really well, and then mirror what Patagonia did. And I don't know if any of you guys ever go hiking or buy outdoorsy clothes, but Patagonia are the best case study of sustainable fashion. And they, for those who don't know this, they've recently created a new way to channel all of their profit into a foundation. And what they've demonstrated was that they can be a $3 billion business and have a very strong business case for the fact that stakeholder capitalism is the future. And everybody in this room surely is here because you're associated with the TMA. You have to consider turning businesses around in different shapes and forms, probably most of your working lives. And businesses that don't adopt sustainability and soon are really all going to be in distress and find themselves with endless stranded assets. So with that in mind, there are solutions out there, and closer to home, whilst we're still trying to change the world, we still need to get dressed. And I know that some of you are going to want to know, well, how can I be better when it comes to getting dressed with sustainability? Purposeful fashion consumption today is really different to what you might think it is. It's not just about buying organic cotton. The first thing I would urge all of you to do is to consider what we call the 5 R's of sustainable fashion, which is rental, re-commerce, recycling, repair, and rewear. These are some of the platforms that we recommend that have various options where, for example, Endless Wardrobe is a great one where you can rent something. If you really like it, you can buy it and hold on to it, or send it back and trade it in for something. Harrods have a partnership with My Wardrobe HQ where you can rent or buy secondary market. Her are at Selfridges down there. You've got Poshmark, Cocoon are great for bags. So there's plenty of options where you can get that fix. We all have that fix that we need sometimes, that little bit of novelty, that little bit of uplift. And you've only really got to look at nature to know that sometimes it's not just evolutionary reasons why certain creatures, birds and fish, are extremely decorative and beautiful. So there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're going to do it, it's about doing it in a very purposeful and trying to be part of a circular sharing economy. And on that note, there's a very special lady in the room here called Sol Escobar, who's sitting in the front here, who is wearing a mustardy beige jacket, who is a great inspiration to me for circular economy principles. That's sort of like the best of this, but at a pre-competitive level. She's created a charity called Give Your Best. And there are 5 million women in the UK now in clothing poverty approximately. And what these women who might be asylum seekers or refugees or on very, very low income can do is join her platform, be verified, and then shop, but they don't pay for the things. They get given the clothing, like a bit like Smart Works, where they can then find something to go on a date with, maybe just go to Tesco in, or go to a job interview in. And you can, if any of you are doing wardrobe clear-outs, consider going to Give Your Best. Okay. If you do have to buy primary market, we've put these into some themes for you based on the sort of, hopefully themes that suit your lives. We've called this one business as usual. These are the kind of brands, and we can always send you this later on as well after the talk. These are the brands we recommend for kind of, business, corporate, day-to-day life. And they all do sustainability very differently. Bike studios are a favourite of mine because they have, once you're bored or you don't want to wear or you've outgrown or don't fit into their things anymore, they'll take them back off you and give you credit so you can then buy something else. They'll do repairs, as do many of these companies, repairs, recycling and circular economy principles. Then we've got off-duty, because we all still want to look good even if we're going to buy coffee in the morning and on the weekend, and these brands we've got a mixture of price points here. Aspiga are a B Corp, who I currently do some various projects with. Pangaea, a brilliant material science company. Deal 1961, denim brand that uses 90% less water and organic materials. Varana own their entire supply chain right down to the workers in India who do the weaving of their cotton, and Bouchen. And then Sheep Ink, that's another one I absolutely love, one of my favourites. When you get a Sheep Ink jumper, it comes with a little tag that's got a QR code that looks like the sheep's tags that they have in their ears, and you can look at the coordinates of where the sheep are, where the wool's coming from, and see the entire visual journey of your sweater. Loki are another great favourite of ours. They use ocean-bound plastic to make their sneakers, and Leonardo DiCaprio recently caught on and decided to be an investor in them. And then we've called this one all-inclusive. So this is if you just need a one-stop shop to try and get, whatever you're looking for, evening wear, day wear, weekend wear, corporate wear, accessories. I would recommend, for different price points and reasons, these would probably be my favourite places to shop sustainable fashion. And then lastly, if you really are going to splash out, there are still companies doing beautiful things at a luxury level that will give you really, 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 really strong sustainability, and they're pieces that you'll cherish forever. And with that, I think we're done. And if you'd like to follow me on Instagram, you can come and scan the QR code after the talk. And thank you all very much indeed. And thank you to the team.